pisos. Mis hijos, pintados en las paredes, escaleras y corredores, ahora hablan por mí. Yo soy tu madre, vestida de blanco, con las piernas tatuadas, o cargando mi bebé de ojos azules en la espalda.
Okay.
Hi, Indran, welcome back.
Yeah.
Oh, what a tragic comedy.
Okay.
Happens when we do these Zoom things.
Yeah.
So I was reading a couple of my poems, waiting for
great.
you to rejoin. So I
Great.
just read one in Spanish, and I'll read the English
Go ahead
translation. Then we'll go back to you, Indran. How about that?
Sounds good. Great.
Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
That'll give you a moment to take a breath too. You're back in. Everything's fine.
Okay.
Excellent.
Yes. National Palace. My children were painted on palace walls over stones that once raised temples. My children were beaten, enslaved, abandoned. My children were strong, resilient, full of life. They were seeds. Their colors adorned the walls of the National Palace and the heart of the city that beats to drums of my sons and daughters. My children survived. I didn't drown them in the river. I didn't flee to the mountaintops. I faced the swords. I bore a mestizo son and daughter. My children, painted on the walls, staircases, and corridors, speak for me now. I am your mother, dressed in white, bearing tattooed legs, or carrying my blue-eyed baby on my back. Thank you.
Very nice.
Very nice.
Okay, very, very nice. Okay, we can't wait to ask some questions. Yeah, but we'll continue with Indran now.
All right. Jennifer, were we at Una Confesión Tardía? No, that's.
And I read it all. I read it in
Okay.
Spanish and I read it in English. I just
Okay.
hadn't finished it, thinking you would jump back in at any
All
moment.
right. So then let's go on to the next one that we selected.
Yes.
Al Cruce. Okay. Yeah. So another poem from the book. This came out of being a poem really about Haiti and the Dominican Republic in a way, but it's a love poem, but it's located in that island known as Quisqueya or Hispaniola. Al Cruce. Entre mis países pendientes, los viajes que me esperan, se encuentra el continente Australia y el océano vasto que lo vincula con mi Ceilán. Los canguros saltan en las llanuras y los koalas se descuelgan de las ramas y el aborigen mueve su bastón para evocar la lluvia en ese país pendiente. Y tú, al otro lado de mi corazón, de esta isla dividida, Sri Lanka en guerra, soldados dominicanos de patrulla en la frontera haitiana, ¿estás lista? ¿Has hecho tu maleta?
Muy bien, muy bien. Excelente. See, dramatic. Okay.
Jennifer will now read the English. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
At the crossing. Of all the lands I've yet to explore, the travels that await me, I find the continent of Australia and the vast ocean which connects it to my Ceylon. Kangaroos jump in the plains and koalas hang from branches, and the Aborigine moves his cane to invoke rain in this yet untraveled country. And you, on the other side of my heart, of this divided island, Sri Lanka at war, Dominican soldiers patrolling the Haitian border. Are you ready? Have you packed your bags?
Muy
Thank you.
bien.
Ahora tenemos 3 poemas más en español y con las versiones en inglés. Ahora otra partida, en este caso de Lima. El poema se llama Partidas. Lima, querida, otra vez con neblina, el día de la partida, el mar casi a la vista, la inmensa bóveda gris y en mis manos unas rebanadas de baklava hecha en casa para el restaurante Miraflorino, del cual me despido, repartiendo su miel, sus nueces, Este dulce del ombligo del planeta, parte de Lima, donde el amor me da vida y el corazón del amigo resiste su infarto. Y mi hija en unas semanas se despedirá como yo ahora.
Okay, muy bien. Excelente. So now the English version. Mhm.
Departures. Dearest Lima, befogged again, on the day of departure, the sea almost visible, immense gray dome, and in my hands slices of baklava, homemade, for the Miraflores restaurant from which I bid farewell, sharing its honey, its nuts, this confection from the middle of the planet, part of Lima, where love gives me life and my friend's heart resists attack, and my daughter in a few weeks will say goodbye, like me now.
Muy bien. Okay.
Viaje.
Excelente.
Thank you.
So, Indran, do you
Yeah.
have more for us?
Yes, there are two more poems we'll read in Spanish, followed by the English, and then we'll be delighted to discuss the project. Viaje. Estamos de viaje, cada uno por su cuenta, tú hacia la montaña, yo al mar, tú con nuevos amigos y con tiempo para reflexionar, yo a ver a mi hija, el fruto del pasado, y a unos amigos todavía en este lado del mar. No sé qué provecho sacar del contraste, montaña, mar, amigos nuevos, una hija alta y bella, casi un adolescente a punto de despegar. ¿A dónde? A una nueva ciudad, al futuro que le espera otra vez sin el padre. A mí no me gusta lo impermanente y darme cuenta del límite de la costa. ¿Qué opciones me quedan? No regresar, no dar algún consejo a este ser vivo al que ayudé a caminar, guardar el silencio cuando cada memoria quiere hablar.
Okay, muy bien. Excelente. Okay, buena experiencia. Interesante. Okay, so Jennifer, the English version right now.
Thank you. Trip. We are on a trip, each one of us on our own, you towards the mountain and I to the sea, you with new friends and time to reflect, I to see my daughter, fruit of the past, and a few friends still on this side of the sea. I don't know how to take advantage of the contrast. Mountain, sea, new friends, a tall and beautiful daughter, almost an adolescent, ready to take off. Where to? A new city? To a future that awaits her again without her father? I don't like the impertinent and realize the limit of the coast. What options are left for me? Not return? Not give some advice to this living being whom I helped teach to walk? Keep silent when every memory wants to talk?
Muy bien.
Thank you.
Okay, another beautiful poem.
Thank
Okay,
you.
rendered in
So
both
we'll-
Espanol and English.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And we'll finish with this poem, Esperando el segundo tiempo. La metáfora viene de fútbol. Esperando el segundo tiempo. Sí, es solo un juego y depende de un hombre árbitro. Y los hinchas vienen de la casa cuyo equipo anfitrión tiene el respaldo. Es una droga. Hay decisiones erróneas, malditas, y finalmente es la tristeza de ver a un equipo defenestrado jugar el resto del partido. Espera, todavía y siempre tendremos el segundo tiempo. Jennifer?
Okay, excelente. Muy bien. So we can't wait to hear the English version of it as well. Okay, Jennifer?
Thank you. Waiting for the second half. Yes, it's only a game and depends on a human referee. And the fans cheer for the team with the home field advantage. It's a drug, There are bad, cursed calls, and finally, the sadness of seeing a team reduced in number play out the rest of the game. Wait, now and always, we will have the second half.
Okay, muy bien. Okay, excelente. Sí. Congratulations to everyone on those beautiful poems and, just precious works of art, I think. And we hope that everyone enjoyed them, the readings and the images and everything, the poetic language, everything. Okay, right now we want to open the floor for questions to the writers and the translators. Anything that you would like to ask? Would we do direct questions or would we do, the writing of questions in the chat?
It's possible to read a poem?
Another poem? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we have time. We
Go to my last link in your chat, please.
Okay, the last one.
Yes. Please, Amir.
But Pedro, can I suggest that we wait till the end to read the poem? Let's have a little conversation about translation now with the group that's gathered, and we can finish with your poem. How's that sound? Yeah.
Okay, it's not necessary.
Yeah, we will read it. Vamos a leerlo al final. ¿Qué te parece? But let's have the questions and comments now. What do you say? Is that okay? Yeah.
We have one that has been written in the chat, and it asks, or the person asked, Nancy asks, how have the collaborations been between author and translator? So anyone can begin. Pedro, do you want to begin?
Which it's not here, Leslie, no? I was expecting Leslie. For that reason, I prefer to read a poem because I don't have a partnership. I am alone.
Pero tal vez, desde su punto de vista, puedes hablar sobre lo que usted piensa sobre ese proyecto colaborativo, desde su perspectiva. ¿Cómo fue? ¿Fue algo bueno? ¿Fue muy fácil? Claro. ¿Cómo fue?
Bueno, como ustedes han visto, mi poesía no es muy coloquial. Mi poesía hace una crítica previa o en el mismo poema del lenguaje que heredo. Para mí una poesía valiosa es la que critica en el poema mismo el lenguaje, experimenta con el lenguaje. Entonces, yo tengo esa opción. Yo hago una poesía que está discutiendo, debatiendo con el lenguaje. No la uso de una forma coloquial, ¿no? Y directa. Para mí es eso. Entonces, obviamente el trabajo con un traductor se hace un poco más, entre comillas, más difícil, más en detalle. Necesita el traductor estar constantemente consultándome sobre peruanismos, por ejemplo, posibilidades múltiples del sentido de las palabras, ¿no es cierto? No es que no rechace lo coloquial, sino para mí lo coloquial es una parte de la poesía, es un ingrediente más, ¿no? Mi poesía trata de ser aglutinante, ¿no? Que varios estilos convivan, y eso hace que la labor de un traductor pueda ser más difícil, claro. Pero en el caso de Leslie, que es una de las traductoras, he tenido una experiencia muy positiva, porque ella es una traductora muy meticulosa, muy profesional, muy dedicada, extremadamente dedicada, y yo le agradezco mucho esa labor.
Ok, muy bien. Do we need to translate? ¿Necesitamos traducir para
Yeah, I think someone should perhaps translate. Could you do that, Wendy?
I could try. Okay, so you said, the way that he constructs his poesía, his poetry, you know, has to do mainly with the language. The language is criticizing within itself. And so he doesn't work too much with colloquialisms, but with this, you know, self-critical, you know, aspect or characteristic in the poem, in the language of the poem itself. So he said for that reason, and also because of the fusion or the combination of styles, you know, he combines styles, and so sometimes that could be a little bit difficult for translators to work with. But because his translator, Leslie, she was very professional. She has lots of experience, positive experience with translation. So it wasn't too difficult for him to work with her to explain subtleties, to explain, you know, cultural differences and things like that. It wasn't too difficult to work through those differences.
Good.
Anyone else wants to add anything that I may have missed?
No, that's very good, Randy. I would just ask a follow-up question to Pedro about those Peruanismos, those things that are particular to the Peruvian Spanish, and how Leslie addressed them in her translation. Did she find equivalent localisms in the English language that would be particular to, let's say, United States or American use of English, or did she leave them in italics in the Peruvian language, or did she? I mean, how do you make that crossover from the local specific Peruvian language to the English language? I'm just curious if you could reflect on that.
Okay. Well, Leslie hace ambas cosas.
Okay.
Cuando es necesario, cuando se puede, traduce al inglés, pero cuando no es posible o cree que no es conveniente, respeta la palabra en español. Y yo creo que está bien. No hay por qué tener una regla rígida. Uno puede adaptar ambos criterios, ¿no? Eso es lo que hace Leslie y yo creo que está bien.
Okay, so he says Leslie does both things. Okay, when she believes that it's not convenient to translate directly, she could make or she will make adaptations, and he thinks that's a good thing as well.
Exactly.
I have a follow-up question for Pedro.
Go ahead, Kate.
I wanted to ask about the connection between Paul Gauguin, who is a painter, and particularly that wonderful self-portrait, and the poetry, that the first poem that you read about the robe that's hiding another robe. I didn't quite understand the connection. If you could talk about the connection between painter and poetry.
Okay. Probablemente que entendiste la conexión en el autorretrato de Gauguin entre su figura, entre su yo y el contorno, la atmósfera o el contexto que lo rodeaba, ¿no? O sea, para Gauguin eso es un retrato desde ya multinaturalista, ¿no? Simétrico, es decir, es tan valioso la naturaleza, los animales, las presencias culturales ahí oscuras, es tan valioso como la figura central. Mejor dicho, en realidad no hay figura central. Lo que está alrededor del retrato es tan valioso, es tan importante como el centro, como el self, como la persona de Gauguin. Entonces, eso que Gauguin nos comunicó y creo que yo descubrió en su itinerario en Oceanía, es lo mismo que hace Vallejo. La poesía de Vallejo tiene una enorme afinidad con esa ese principio de Gauguin. Es decir, la poesía de César Vallejo también es simétrica. No entiende la idea de un sujeto único, unívoco. Vallejo le interesa antes que pensar en una identidad única, individual, singular, mejor pensar en clase social, como Marx, mejor pensar en términos de especie, como Darwin, mejor pensar en subconsciente o inconsciente, como Freud, y mejor pensar en términos amerindios, en términos de simetría, porque para un amerindio, sea quechua, amazónico, etcétera, un río es un hermano, una montaña es mi madre, un árbol es mi hermano. Tienen la misma categoría que un ser humano. Mejor dicho, para hacer más radical mi discurso, como lo dice Eduardo Viveiros de Castro, un antropólogo muy importante del Brasil, todos somos humanos, animales, árboles y acaso objetos. Lo que nos diferencia son los cuerpos. Es decir, todos tenemos un alma o cultura común. Lo que nos diferencia son los cuerpos. Gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Okay, did everyone get that? Maybe.
No, I think you
maybe.
need to translate.
I'll try.
Okay,
So,
thank you. Thank you so much.
it's a lot.
That you understand the Leslie works, no? The Leslie, you know.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It is a mouthful, a headful, I think. So he's talking about the relationship or the mention of the two robes in the poem, the two robes that the poet or the poetic voice, expresses or describes. And the poet is saying that it is like a combination. It's a kind of symmetric type of unifying, like relationship that he's trying to show between the human figure and the environment, the landscape that surrounds that human figure, and trying to show that there is a relationship between a symmetric relationship, a harmonious relationship to a great degree between the other creatures and other life forms in nature, in la naturaleza, that complements and enhances all life forms. So his thing is showing like a greater dimension or a cosmovision, which is not just Western, but it's also coming from the Amerindians. It's also coming from Freud. It's also coming from all the naturalists who have recognized this relationship between the human being, the human condition, as well as in relation to the environment and nature. Life in all its forms is symmetric.
Right. And what I also got from Pedro's comment was that there is a similarity with Vallejo's poetry.
Right.
César Vallejo, like Gauguin, has this symmetrical double identity. There's not a single unitary self, but a kind of double self that are one is kind of overlaid on top of the other. And he can sense that in the poetry, as well as in Gauguin's portrait, the combination of nature and self.
Good. Okay, Kate.
Excellent follow-up as well, I think. Okay, so any more questions? Do we have any more questions? Okay, let me check the chat quickly to see if I have any more, or if anyone would like to ask a question directly to one of our writers. I think Nancy underlined, a mountain is my mother, A mountain is my mother. So I think, whose poem had that? A mountain is my mother. I think it was Indran's. Oh, I think Pedro.
Well,
mencionó
it was
esto.
a phrase, just a
A
phrase
phrase.
among others,
Yeah.
trying to describe the spirit of the Amerindians. No, for
Mhm.
Amerindians, all the surrounder is in relation with you. Finally, the unity, the sense of the self is not one; it's a relationship with the river, with the tree, with the sky, etc. No, in these terms, I talk about this. No, my mother is the mountain, and my brother is is a tree, etc. No, it's part of the. It's not a thing. It's part of the behavior, the life of is the human being of the Amerindians.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think I got it as well. I think it's like you're trying with these types of images and, and symbols, you're trying to evoke that communion that many different, civilizations have come to recognize, this communion that we have that, with nature, with the environment, with all creatures.
I have a question for Indran and Jennifer.
Okay, go ahead.
For the poem Viaje, I'm just wondering, this is a very particular question, so I'm sorry if it's too specific. Why did you choose to use the word trip rather than voyage? Is voyage too literary?
I don't recall.
Because,
I can guarantee you that we discussed every single word at great length, but I don't recall how we wound up on that one. But un viaje, it's a trip. It's not a voyage. The use of Spanish, it's more of a common term. Like, I'm going on a trip. Like we would say in English, we wouldn't say I'm going on a voyage. So that's probably why
maybe it was more colloquial, but isn't there a line in the Spanish version, estar en viaje? En viaje, it appears in the poem, and I'm just wondering how you translated that. Or I guess to be on a trip.
Estamos de viaje, the poem begins.
De viaje.
Yeah.
What, and how did you translate that? To be traveling?
We are on a trip.
on a trip.
On a trip. Okay. I just wanted to pin you down.
I think Nancy has a question as well. She wants to know, how was the collaboration, especially between Indran and Jen, both speakers of English? Where you had both speakers of English working together. How was that collaboration? What did that entail?
Jen, do you want to begin or shall I? Welcome.
Well, obviously we have a difference in gender, and I've worked a lot with male voices. I'm very comfortable within female voices, but I've worked a lot with male voices. And I grew up in the United States. I grew up in Kansas, and my English is very American, and Indran's English is not. And so, we had the gender difference, we had the difference in English registers, and then it was also challenging because I'm a Spanish speaker, and so that at times I would tell Indran, I don't think you're saying in Spanish what you think you're saying. And we actually did a revision of the versions in Spanish as well. And I appreciate your recollection of how the book came into being, Indran. I remember it differently, but that's fine. We had some go-abouts, and I would simply say, I wouldn't say that. I'm the translator and I wouldn't say it. I wouldn't say it that way because that's not my register, because I wouldn't express. And this was a project that, we decided to do together. And since my voice as a translator is giving voice to the work in English, and, Indran chose to work with me, obviously I chose things that he would not have if he would have done the translation, himself, or if he would have originally written the work in English. I don't know, Indran, you want to say anything else?
Sure, no, that's all very good. You notice that our two names are on the book in prominently on the front page. And whenever we read, or I read from the book, or we read together, the translation, the collaboration is key, that it's a book that's been translated from one language to the other. And during that translation process, as Jennifer mentioned, both languages were revisited and reviewed and remade in some cases. Also, poems changed even the form. There was not many, but a few, like Canto en 12 renglones, originally was Canto en 8 renglones in Ventana Azul. So it's an 8-line poem. And because of form and because of the way we were working together, we made it a 12-line poem in the Spanish and 12 lines in English. One thing you'll notice in the book that there is a correspondence between the English and the Spanish, almost picture perfect. I mean, every line, if a poem has 10 lines in the Spanish, it has 10 lines in the Spanish. If it has 44 lines, 44 lines. And we really worked very hard to mirror that. Now, because we like the visual beauty of that, and we think that we were able to do it without sacrificing some, in some sense, of the meaning or the intent of the original. Now, that said, yes, there is a British English, there is a Sri Lankan English, there's an American English, there are different kinds of English that I grew up with and inform the way I write. There are also some words in this poem that, like Joder in America, which is a very popular poem from the book, and it's translated as to fuck in America, or something, which I would never have used previously in the previous 19 books I've written in poetry, never used that verb. So it's a verb. It's a sort of liberating book for me because it's tried to be as honest as possible to the language we live and work with today in America. But America for me is that writ large. It's the continent. It's Argentina, and it's the United States, it's Canada, it's Haiti too. I mean, we read the poem Crossing. It's this region. And so I think there's an influence of the Spanish on the English on the Spanish, but also the even Quechua and the ghosts of other languages, perhaps at least in some of the names in the Peruvian poems. There's one that has to do exactly with this question, which is interesting in Peru today. In the contemporary Peru, Quechua is a much more prominent language than it was when I lived in the country between 2009 and 2013. There's really been a huge change. And anyway, but going back to it was a seamless translation though, and a seamless collaboration. There was very little dispute. I mean, there were differences of opinion and we had to come to agreement on those, and we did on every one. And that took some time here and there, but it was never acrimonious or frustrating at all. It was a lovely, enriching experience of sharing. And that's why I feel prouder of this book in a way than many of my other books, partly because of the collaboration, partly because I think it improved in the collaboration. And it's a sort of a unique book in a sense. I've always belonged where I speak. At least that's how I've defined it now. And I felt upset when I was rejected. I was not given derecho de sitio. I was not given the right to be because of who I am or where I come from. And that's happened, of course, to migrants throughout the world. And it happened to me. And in my particular case, I was born in a country that no longer exists. It's even been renamed. Ceylon has become Sri Lanka. So I mentioned Ceylon in that poem. and I mentioned Sri Lanka too. And so there's a kind of the search for a home is part of this book, and I guess other books I've written, but I find a home in the Spanish language that is spoken in America. And sometimes I'll meet someone who says, why are you writing in Spanish? You know, why don't you stay with English? And I say, at first, when I first heard that question, I was a little bit perplexed and upset. And then I moved on and I kept writing in Spanish. And I've now written 8 books of poetry and published them in Spanish. And I'm about to publish selected poems in Spanish in Spain, in the mother country, so to speak. So I feel that you have to sort of take advice, but use what you can of it. But you have to stick with your drummer or whatever that inner voice is telling you. And for me, this book I could not have translated this book myself. I don't think I had the energy. You know, it's such an amazing act of energy, this summoning and release to translate, to write, to recreate the poem. And so I'm very grateful that this book exists. And it is an improved book than Ventana Azul. And it's a unique book in a sense because of the collaboration, and I'm grateful for it. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we can collaborate again at some point in the future if the gods shine on us. Yeah, I'll stop there. Any other related question? I mean, it's an important question of why make that. I had to give up a little bit of myself, you know, by letting go the poem into the English of Jennifer, you know, and I had to do that. And in some cases, she would not budge, and that's how it stood. Finally, it's the version is. I mean, we had to, you know, compromise, but I had to compromise. And anyway, we ended up. I'm very pleased with the project. Yeah. Thanks.
As a translator, when I work with authors, I always make sure they understand that I have the last word. It's my name. I am the translator, and I will make concessions. I'm happy to, you know, talk about, you know, reasons why I chose a particular term, and I'm happy to change my mind, and I do so quite frequently. But you know, when Indran said he had to concede, he did, because I would say this is my name, and I'll make the last decision on it.
I was thinking about Spanish as spoken in Peru versus Spanish as spoken in Mexico, or all the various countries, and you get differences in meaning there too. Indran's Spanish is influenced by Haiti and other Spanish-speaking countries, and it may not be the same as Jennifer's. So then that becomes another issue to sort out about the poet's, the author's intent, and then what the possibilities are in English that would honor that. So I think that both of you are very brave, and I think that as a translator, I have trouble telling my authors that I'm the translator and my name's on it and that's the way it's going to be. The best I ever get in concessions is, okay, you keep your French or your Spanish the way you want it, you're the author, but the punctuation, the readability in English is me. And we somehow get through some of the obstacles there, but not always easily. And trust is the most important thing, I think.
Muy bien, excelentes comentarios, excellent comments. And I'm going in between Spanish and English. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, but thank you, Nancy, for that comment. Very pertinent comment. And I also had a question for Jennifer, you know, about her new book, Las Traiciones, Betrayals.
El libro de las traiciones.
El libro de las traiciones. Okay, how did you work with that? You said you sometimes you worked in Spanish, sometimes you worked in English. You know, how did you like, deal with that? How have you kind of, resolved that, the dual language, which is being presented but by one author?
Well, it is challenging because it doesn't fit nicely into a box. And I think people like to categorize or put things into specific boxes. And quite frankly, here in the United States, we are a Spanish-speaking country. We're the second largest Spanish-speaking country in the world. It shouldn't surprise us that people write in Spanish here, whether they are of Hispanic origins or not. I've been speaking Spanish my entire adult life, and I'm a Spanish professor. And I actually began writing the collection in Spanish several years ago in Mexico, and published a few poems in the Spanish versions. And then, over the years, just having challenges trying to publish in Spanish, being Jennifer Rathbun, and switching to English, and decided to write them in English. I was just extremely pleased that my editor had reached out to me and said that he was interested in doing the collection and doing it bilingually, because when we were first having exchanges, it's like, okay, which language should we go for? And he's like, no, we need to do both. You need to do both languages. And I feel them in both languages. I read them both in both languages. Que vive el español. What else can I say?
Malentzin is one of my favorite historical figures. And so I was wondering, what were some of the considerations that you had as you chose her to be, chose to have a poem about her in your poemario?
I actually have a whole series of poems about her, and she's just one of the most important historical female figures that we have in the New World. And there's not a lot that's known about her, and her figure is greatly misunderstood and misrepresented. And it has undergone numerous transformations over the years. So, she's either this historical mother figure to the new race, or she is, this
traicionera.
Yeah, she's this horrific person who betrayed her people and caused the downfall of the old world and allowed for, the Spaniards to conquer the Americas. Mm-hmm. And so she's either a mother that's embraced or completely rejected. And she did bear mestizo children, and she was a translator and an interpreter. And so I feel I'm attracted by her figure. I'm enthralled by her figure and her history. I'm a translator. I manage more than one language. I have Hispanic children. And so I just felt like I had all these connections with her. And then the idea of the betrayal, was she betraying her people, or was she betrayed? And so I have this underlying theme of betrayal that runs through my poetry collection.
Okay, sounds good. Excellent. Okay, because I myself, I did some work on her in terms of, translation, in terms of translating the Conquest. And she was the main figure and stuff like that. And, so that's why it was, interesting to see you present a poem like that. Yeah. Muchas gracias. Okay, are we, finished? Any more comments? Okay, let me see. Do we have any more questions? We still have some time. Let me see. We have some time. So do we have any more pressing, urgent questions for writers and translators?
I thank you, everyone, for this wonderful opportunity. I just want to ask Pedro a question, and then we can ask Pedro to read his poem.
Right.
Pedro, quiero hacerte una pregunta antes de que leas tu poema. It has to do with your role vis-a-vis the Peruvian language or the Spanish language, you as a poet and as a critic and as a blogger, because you do your blog very frequently, and sometimes you label yourself as an outsider or as a critic, as a, and yet, I mean, you are an idiosyncratic, unique sort of voice, and at the same time, you are a scholar of Vallejo. And so I'm wondering about the role of the poet vis-a-vis the language. Should the poet be an outsider? Should the poet be an insider? Should the poet be an academic? Should the poet be outside of the academic world? Or is there a different choice for each poet, and all choices are valid? That's my question to you. Quiero saber si el poeta debe ser alguien afuera del sistema académico o adentro de la academia. Si el poeta debe ser un crítico o un exponente de la cultura. ¿Cuál es el papel del poeta a tu juicio, en tu opinión, y qué podemos aprender de tu propia experiencia como poeta, crítico, ¿no? Blogger, sobre esas cuestiones del papel del poeta en la sociedad? I know it's not exactly what I said in English, but please feel free to respond.
You have to unmute yourself, Pedro.
I understand. Thank you. Bueno, desde Baudelaire, por lo menos, el poeta es poeta y es crítico, ¿no? Tiene una opinión del arte y de la política. Asimismo lo tuvo Vallejo. Vallejo no solo es poeta, fue periodista, le interesaron la política de su tiempo, el arte, los inventos, la literatura, ¿no? Y Vallejo hizo teatro, Vallejo, etcétera, escribió en francés. A lo que voy es que yo creo que uno tiene esa posibilidad de cultivar varios formatos del español, o de lo que uno cree que es el español. Ahora, yendo un poco más profundamente, mis padres ambos eran quechohablantes, mi padre y mi madre, pero también hablaban en español, eran bilingües. Yo no aprendí el quechua, sé algunas palabras, pero ciertamente tengo la sensibilidad andina, tengo la sensibilidad quechua. No solo se transmite la cultura, en este caso del quechua, por la lengua, se transmite por otras fuentes, otros canales. Entonces, particularmente, yo no hago, cuando escribo en español, con el español que tengo, no creo que esté usando un español donde esté ausente la cultura andina. Pero no necesito usar palabras andinas, no necesito nombrar cosas exóticas o más o menos locales. No, eso no tiene interés para mí. Para mí lo que tiene interés es engancharte, conectarte con una cultura y dialogar con el mundo. Y yo creo que el español, por ejemplo, es un buen mediador cultural, es un válido mediador cultural. Eso lo expresa Vallejo. El español de Vallejo no es solamente un español, digamos, estándar, si es que puede existir un español estándar. Es un español ya mestizo, es un español plagado de cosas del peso cultural peruano, pero sin que haya folclore allí, sin que haya un color local específico. Tanto es así que Arguedas es quizá el escritor peruano más conocido, narrador. Arguedas, José María Arguedas, expresa su agradecimiento a Vallejo público. Sin Vallejo, Arguedas jamás hubiera podido entender que cuando él escribía en español no traicionaba su cultura quechua. Porque claro, ¿cuál es el problema de alguien que ha aprendido a español a los 13 años y solamente hablaba quechua hasta los 13 años. ¿Cuál es el conflicto primero de ese escritor? ¿Cómo es usar una lengua que es el español y traicionar mi cultura, traicionar el quechua, darle la espalda a la cultura, a la gente con la que yo amo, ¿no? Arguedas mismo declara que ese conflicto lo resolvió leyendo a Vallejo, leyendo Trilce, leyendo Los Heraldos Negros, leyendo Tuxteno, varias cosas. Entonces, bueno, el problema de ser scholar, no solo en América Latina, sino en Estados Unidos, es que hay pocos buenos poetas scholars, muy pocos. El problema con ser scholar y ser poeta es que uno se vuelve didáctico, uno termina haciendo poesía de autoayuda, se toma demasiado en serio el rol didáctico y eso malogra la poesía. La poesía debe ser un lenguaje donde nos sentamos libres, donde no nos guíe una agenda teórica, una agenda políticamente correcta. Cuando escribimos poesía debemos ser políticamente incorrectos. Debemos poner en peligro nuestro puesto en la academia, el peligro de no ser ascendidos a full professors. Eso no se puede hacer, ¿no? Cuando uno está demasiado ligado al académico. En fin, son decisiones propias, pero ese es el problema de ser scholar y poeta. Yo veo ahí una diferencia grave, sobre todo en estos últimos años, donde hemos entendido la poesía como un espacio para dar consejos, dar nuestros deseos de cambio a la sociedad, y donde poco se ve nuestros dramas en términos que no sean los de la academia, ¿no? Los de la agenda teórica, los de lo que es correcto hablar. Yo creo que falta más incorrección, más pensamiento autónomo y una especie qué sé yo, de expresarse con más libertad. Gracias.
Gracias.
Okay, muy bien. Okay, so Indran, ¿quieres ayudarme a traducir lo que Pedro acaba de decir? Do you want to help me translate what he just said?
Yeah,
The answer?
I can add. I mean, for me, the main conclusion is that you can't really be a scholar and a poet at the same time. I mean, you become too didactic in your poetry if you're a scholar. One corrupts the other. I think I heard Pedro say that regarding the role of the scholar and the role of the poet. I also heard him say that if you are within the academy and you're on the road towards full professorship, you make compromises and you make decisions, that you're not free. You're not really, and you're not writing with your whole heart and mind. I mean, you don't have the freedom of the poet on the outside when you're in the inside in that way. And your decisions, and I heard him say that. And that's my conclusion. So I hope that's correct. Go ahead, Wendy, if you'd like to add.
At first, I was just listening, not listening to translate. I was just following. So I got some of it. So I think he was talking about the mestizaje, okay, the mixing, the, mestizaje, del español. He's saying that that Spanish has been, mixed from the very beginning, especially with the Amerindian Indian, the indigenous languages and various other influences. And that even Vallejo, he operated as a literary professional on different levels in different fields. And so I think he's saying that, as a poet, you don't only have to work as a poet, but you can use this literary artistry in various different ways. And so, that's what I got from it. It's multifaceted, and that, you need to conserve the freedom of this, of the artistry. And when it's corrupted, when it's, it has an agenda, when either political or, academic, then you lose that, freedom, you lose the voice becomes compromised. And I think that's what he's saying. And when he says that, I think about La Poesía Afro-Peruana, for example. And if he thinks that is a compromised voice, or if it's because it's well situated in activism, very well situated in activism. And so if he thinks that that is not a pertinent, a relevant use for poetry.
Are you asking me? Are you
Yeah.
asking me?
Mhm,
Okay,
mhm.
okay, good. Vallejo again. Vallejo, Trilce, the centenary of Trilce the next year is a extremely very important book of poetry. At least one of the composition of Trilce composition is around Zamacueca, is around Marinera, is around finally the Afro-Peruvian culture. But until now, any critics catch it, that kind of interest in, from Vallejo to the Afro culture. For me, it's extremely important, because without the rhythm, without the music of the Afro-Peruvian or Afro culture, it's impossible to write poetry. In the root of the poetry in Latin America, in the root of the more important poetry in Latin America is the Afro culture inside. Not only in Peru, in Las Antillas, Cuba, in Borges, in Jorge Luis Borges, apparently the more European writer from Latin America. It's impossible to write with the richest heredity from the Afro culture. Is my point of view.
But may I just make a quick intervention? Leslie Barry has just been able to join us. So I know we are short on time, but Leslie, would you like to say a few words? And also you raised a point in the chat regarding the scholarship. Would you like to speak?
Oh, yeah, no, hi, and sorry, I'm so late.
No.
That's okay.
But no, it was just a translation point. And I think Pedro was saying you can't be a successful scholar and an academic trying and a poet trying to make full professor, trying to write certain kinds of poetry. That means person in a certain kind of US academia. You can be a scholar and a poet. It's the US academic structure.
Well, I understand now the scholar, but in terms more or maybe more open, I don't understand the scholar that is fear. No entiendo el scholar que tiene miedo de salirse del rol de la agenda. Si ser scholar es incluir otras curiosidades, salirse de lo políticamente correcto, soy profundamente scholar, soy totalmente scholar, pero lo scholar que conozco, que se limita a simplemente por miedo o por miedo por excesivo respeto a una agenda, termina no pensando, no solamente así, no siendo buen poeta, termina no pensando en lo que debe pensar. Esa es mi opinión.
Sí.
Sí, good.
No, yo entiendo tu opinión.
Good,
Pero tú, no más era un punto de traducción.
good.
Bueno,
O sea,
Sí,
no creo que hayas querido decir que no se puede ser intelectual.
soy profundamente intelectual si lo intelectual abarca también la poesía o lo que sé, o la poesía abarca lo intelectual. No se puede, depende de cómo uno enfatice, ¿no? De dónde entra. Lo intelectual abarca lo poético y lo poético abarca lo intelectual. Es como la gallina o los huevos. ¿Quiénes son primero, no? No se sabe.
Interesting discussion, I think, interesting dilemma, or, you know, two sides of the debate, I think, but, you know, you have different points of view that it is possible to do both things. And on the other hand, it, you know, it could pose, combining both can pose some sort of compromising your views. And I think it depends on the situation, because I've known some scholars who, you know, are very artistic and they express, or they function at a level of freedom that, you know, is comfortable for them. So it depends, I think. But but you notice that many poets, you know, work outside of the academy, and they are able to reach their you know, heights, the highest points of their careers or potential. They can, you know, like reach their potential outside of the academy a little easier than within the academy. Because I've seen it many times, okay? Because you have like Blas Jimenez from the Dominican Republic, and he never could fit really into the academic world. He could operate outside. He operated outside for the most part. So you see it a lot. So both things, it's a debate. It's an ongoing debate, I believe. See. Any more questions? Algo más? Anything else?
I think we should listen to Pedro's poem because we're running out of time.
Oh, yes. El último poema de Pedro.
Leslie, ¿quieres leer algo? Leslie, ¿quieres leer un poema? Porque leí Enredadera y tu versión la leyó Indran. ¿Tú tienes algo de Roxosol quizá? ¿Un poema de Roxosol para leer?
No sé, bueno, tengo acá el libro.
Bueno, muéstralo.
Puedo leer cualquier cosa. ¿Tienes un poema
sí.
un poema que no se haya leído antes en una reunión como esta?
Elígelo tú, por favor. Muestra el libro porque no lo conocen. Se llama Amerindios. Sí, Amerindians. Un poco más arriba, ponlo más arriba. Un poquito, ajá. Sí, ya.
Y al azar, bueno, leo el primer poema.
Ya.
Okay. So, ¿leo en español o en inglés?
Both.
Okay. La mayoría aquí habla español o leo inglés primero.
Inglés primero.
Okay. You look like you're in love as you leave is the title. And it has 1, 2, 4 short parts. So 1, you look like you're in love as you leave, the fog, a night, a memory. These are the only things that bind you. A gaze straight ahead at your destiny. There's been so much life in your hands, among your fingers too, while you wrote about whether that girlfriend of yours, the one that saved you from loneliness, rescued you from death, placed herself at your side and kept you company without setting conditions and without keeping track of time. 2, wave upon wave of birds from the discovery of what you loved, or waves of tears, rather involuntary, brought on by what you felt between your foot and your hand, sensitive, perceptive, and a common spear deep, bleeding against your heart. But you've seen nothing of what you'd observed. But you remember nothing, because surviving is a forgetting, because this thing of being a poet consists of a radical forgetfulness. 3, the die is cast, the wind lifts your hair the die is cast, the wind lifts your hair or your premature baldness from the left-hand window, and from the other window, you observe the apocalypse undaunted. Your mother taught you an effective prayer to elude it. That you have only stuck to in life, to honor your mother, that you love and have loved, how to navigate the apocalypse and every kind of definitive scene. 4, a prayer with your index finger and thumb together against what is to come. Joy breaking you into 1,000 pieces. Bliss, choked all the way to the nostrils. The breeze calms down and the music changes. Your closed fist reaches up to you to keep the secret. A kiss that will know how to quiet you. A hug to hold up all our overflowing love. Some transparent tears through what still has not been, but will surely be. And so it's the poem. It's like an invitation au voyage. It's the beginning of the journey that is the book.
Leslie,
I believe it's already right here.
Leslie, tengo el libro. ¿Qué página es para leerlo en español?
Es 22.
Ok.
Empieza en la página 22.
Ok, comienzo. Luces enamorado antes de partir. Luces enamorado antes de partir. La bruma, la noche, un recuerdo, son lo único que te ata. Una mirada de frente a tu destino. Mucha vida hubo entre tus manos, entre tus dedos también, al escribir sobre si aquella tu enamorada, la que te salvó de la soledad, la que te rescató de la muerte, la que se puso a tu lado y te hizo compañía de modo incondicionado y sin calcular el tiempo. 2, oleadas de pájaros del descubrimiento, de lo que amabas, de lágrimas más bien involuntarias, por lo que sentías entre tu pie y la mano, sensibles, perceptivas, y una común lanza profunda, sangrante, contra tu corazón, pero si no has visto nada de lo que ya miraras, pero si no recuerdas nada por lo de sobrevivir, que es un olvido, porque lo de ser poeta consiste en un radical olvido. 3, la suerte está echada, el viento levanta tu cabellera, tu calvicie precoz. Desde la ventana izquierda y desde la otra ventana contemplas impávido el apocalipsis. Tu madre te enseñó una eficaz oración para sortearlo y solo a eso te has atenido en la vida, por honrar a tu madre que amas y que has amado, como sortear el apocalipsis y toda clase de cuadro definitivo. 4, una oración con tu índice y tu pulgar juntos contra lo que está por venir, la dicha rompiéndote en 1000 pedazos, la dicha atragantada y hasta por las narices, la brisa se sosiega y la música cambia, tu puño cerrado te alcanza para guardar el secreto, un beso que sabrá calmarte, un abrazo para soportar el desbordante cariño de todos, unas lágrimas transparentes a través de lo que todavía no ha sido, pero seguro va a ser.
Okay, muy bien. Excelente. Okay, so we're glad that you were able to read the last poem. Nos alegra que podía leer ese poema porque sí, de verdad es una belleza. Okay. So I just said that, I'm glad, or we are glad that he was able to read his last poem, because in reality, it is a beautiful one. Okay, muy bien. Anything else? Otra pregunta, any other question para los escritores?
Can we take our group photo so we can put it on Facebook? Oh, Jen is here now. Oh, somebody said photo. I'm here. And Katie, Yirmiyahu, and Polly, if you'd like to join us for our group photo, that would be lovely. It's so nice to see your face, and wait time for Polly.
Wonderful. Hi, Polly. Good to see you.
Everybody look good?
Katie.
Everybody ready?
Yeah.
Ready.
Who's going to take the
Ready,
picture?
Freddy.
How do you
I'm
take?
gonna take it, anyone else can
Okay.
too. Uno, dos, tres. All
Good.
right, I took it.
Can you
Anyone else
take
want
one
to
more?
take it?
I don't know how you take it, actually.
You just do print screen and then you have to do things my children taught me what to do.
I think I have never done it, so I don't know.
Mucho gusto de verte, Leslie.
Igualmente,
abrazo.
Pedro, otro.
Un abrazo grande.
It really makes
Oh.
the event when both translator and author are present and we
Yeah.
can hear from you directly and hear you read your words directly too.
Thank you very much, everyone, for being here and sharing this afternoon with us.
Yeah, thanks for your presence.
Thank you for organizing it.
Muchas
Thank you
gracias
for
a todos.
organizing
Muchas
it, and
gracias,
sorry I
Indran.
missed the last
Un
one.
cariño a todos.
Yeah, we thank you. We thank you. And on behalf of DC Alt, we would like to extend our heartfelt thanks to you all and for sharing with us your precious works. We know that they are precious, and we are very happy that you were able to share them, share your insights, explanations, etc. And we look forward to, we thank you for getting us off to a great start for our series of presentations for the next year. And we thank everyone, all who participated, the members of our organization, the audience, the members or the people who were able to attend. We do thank you for coming and for, taking the time to come and be part of this very interesting dialogue, I think, poetic dialogue.
And we would be remiss if we didn't thank Wendy for her beautiful job in Espanol and Inglés, moderating
Thank you.
this session
Thank you.
as well.
Thank you very much.
And for those of you new to DC Alt, I think Polly said Katie brought her. We do have a mailing list, and if you are interested in receiving our mailings and authors and translators, if you're not part of DC Alt, even though we're the DC Area Literary Translators Association, anyone can come to our events and we welcome you. Do we have our address that we can put in the chat if people want to get a hold of us? Indran, do you want to put an address there?
I'm not sure what
I should
address.
also add that we're going to have a workshop in January. So people who are working on a literary translation now should get it ready and participate in that workshop. It'll be
I'm sorry,
announced.
Nancy.
Okay, that sounds good.
I can highly
Well, I
recommend
know.
those workshops, by the way. They're fabulous. And
They're a
I
lot of fun.
participated, a couple months ago. It was so helpful.
And I
Good.
think we have, you'll
Good.
see our schedule of events that we have coming up every other month. So we have a reading, a presentation after